And you will say, what? You want us to make you look good? That's not my job. Your job is to make us look good. Our job is not to make you look good, American Jews. What do you have to worry about? Your job is to make us look good. And here's how you do it. Every one of us has to serve 3 years in the Army, 2 years in the Army, some of us 5 years, and then for the rest of our lives, you have got to serve 2 or 3 years in the army of words. You've got to learn to fight the political battle, which is even more important at this point than the military battle that we are. We'll fight the military battle. We're not asking you necessarily to come and be lone soldiers, although some of you can. You've got to learn how to fight back on the campuses, how to make the arguments. Now, they keep shifting. You know, the ground keeps shifting under us. They keep changing the language. Intersectionality wasn't even a word 10 years ago. Now suddenly it's intersectionality. You've got to stay on top of it. And you know how we train for the Army? We don't train for defensive warfare. If the war against Israel ever had to be fought on Israeli soil, do I have to tell you? It's an impossibility. So it's the same thing. Don't let the war of words ever be fought about Israel's nature. Let it be fought about why you can't accept Israel, why you have to single out this tiny people. Try to find Israel on the map. It's hardly there. You know, we used to play this game, Where's Waldo? There's, where is Waldo on the map? Are you going to really tell me that this is the country you want to blame? Push them, teach them how to defend by attacking. Teach them really what one says as in fencing. You've got to do that. You've got to make demands on them. They've got to serve for 3 years in the army of words.
Thought that was kind of a revealing little clip there for the type of, like, talking about the discourse with Brandon Sutton, the warp discourse of, like, my adult life, basically. It's kind of, you know, you kind of see that there are sort of imperial ambitions behind some of that, but
oh, no doubt about it. And you know, it's been interesting to see over this past couple of weeks as there has finally been some more significant pushback to the narrative making regarding Israel, that you could tell, like, a lot of supporters of Israel in the United States are pretty exhausted with the work of trying to deny what is very clearly going on in front of all of our eyes. It's 7 o'clock right here in Texas. And as of now, there has been a ceasefire. Let's just remember the context of all of this. At this point, you know, the estimations of death alone is sitting around over 200 Palestinians, including 60 children, right? Remember, this is not a symmetrical conflict in any sense of the word, despite how much the Biden administration, that obviously the Netanyahu government and a lot of other apologists try to make it seem. So, you know, as of this afternoon, the Netanyahu government accepted a recommendation from the Egyptian initiative for a ceasefire. And I wanted to note a couple things just in the early reporting. Some of the early interviews that we were seeing from people in Gaza about this were saying, we're very happy and we would like to be able to celebrate, but we're fearful that going into the ceasefire, we will be hit hard again, because in the history of this conflict, Israel has typically hit one big strike right before, ceasefire goes into effect. And I just want people to understand the psychological warfare of that, right? Regardless of if this is what's happening in this case, just the fact that you can't even feel comfortable to celebrate a ceasefire after you have seen so much devastation in your country and the people around you, because you know that the people on the other side are trying to dole as much death and destruction as possible. This easily could have happened days ago if had the Biden administration not stood so strongly against any kind of a ceasefire operation. The United States consistently blocked UN resolutions to try to stop the conflict. And it's disgusting, as is the continuation of, what is it, $735 million arms deal to Israel right now. Thank
Yeah.
God for Sanders and Tlaib and the folks who are trying to fight against it. But it doesn't look like, I mean, it's good that it's happening and we should continue to support it and advocate for it. But it doesn't look like it's necessarily going to delay or stop this move because there are so many people in Congress still with their head up their ass about this conflict that they won't be able to put up, a sizable enough of opposition. Think about people like Ro Khanna, who has been a complete coward and a slimeball when it comes to this.
Well, I mean, Israel's got a startup culture.
Yeah. Well, I mean, which was so disgusting for folks who didn't hear him say that earlier this week. And remember, though, that not only have there been so many lives lost, 17 hospitals and clinics were destroyed. The only COVID-19 clinic was destroyed. Access to water, because of the bombing campaign, around 800,000 people lost access to clean drinking water in Gaza. It's absolutely disgusting. I don't know if we wanted to play a couple of these clips, though.
Before that, I just want to say that there's this perverse way that Biden, basically offering support to Bibi this entire time, has created this as the victory, right? Like the ceasefire as a victory. And I just want to point out this tweet from Jihad Abu Salim. A ceasefire is welcome, but it isn't enough. It is time to end the blockade. It is time to fully open all of Gaza's crossings. It is time to lift restrictions on imports and exports. It is time for Palestinians in Gaza to have more than 6 hours of electricity a day. And that's I think the key point here, because obviously there should be a ceasefire. Like obviously we shouldn't be making these these bombs deals while they're like actively committing human rights, atrocities. But besides that, like a maintenance of the status quo is also unacceptable.
No, and I think this is the big point that we want to make, and we can play this clip in a second of like the huge marches that we've seen in the United States. It has been incredible, as we talked about last week, to see the outpouring from so many people on this question. After years and years and years of silence, it's not enough, but there is certainly movement, and you can see it and you can feel it. When you're seeing rallies from Austin, Texas, to Miami, to Michigan, to Los Angeles, to New York, I can tell you right now, as somebody who remembers, doing very lonely marches in Washington, D.C. as a young college student, seeing this outpouring of support for Palestinians' human rights has been incredible. Again, it's too late. Not that we can't shift the future. It's like, we needed this decades and decades ago, but we can use this momentum going forward. Do we have this first march, or do you have it as B-roll?
Yep, here it is. Yeah, and late, I absolutely way too late, and it's insanely frustrating. But late's better than never for stuff like this.
Yes. So this is just an incredible showing of support here, and obviously there are examples of this all around the globe, that have been really, really heartening to see. Let's just let's play this Biden clip too before we sort of zoom out for a second, because I just want people to remember just how much of an ass that Biden has been. And beyond just being rude, Biden is complicit in the deaths in Gaza. Biden is complicit in the ethnic cleansing that is continuing. Biden is complicit in all of this. The United States had from the get-go the ability to stop these atrocities from happening by pressuring Israel. And instead of that, you literally were just getting straight up support from Biden, which only emboldened people like Netanyahu and his more hardline supporters. And what he says, his talk here with what he says to Rashida Tlaib, who he continually calls Rashid.
Yeah, Rashid Wallace, sorry.
Should show people just how little he cares about this crisis.
You're getting it done. Debbie, you're and Representative Dan Kildee is a good friend. Representative Brenda Lawrence. And by the way, be careful what you say to Representative Slotkin. She knows more than you. They may be watching you.
Well, I just got to pause there. Slotkin's a former CIA agent. And I would just say former CIA agents should not be able to have elected position. I don't think. I think that the entire
we'll do cancel culture on that one.
Exactly. Like you shouldn't be allowed. Like fundamentally, that whole field, whether it needs to practically exist or not, is is fundamentally opposed to democracy, right? Like the idea that you would have, yeah. Anyway, we'll get back to Biden here, but
Where are you? I tease her all the time. But she's a great, great, great addition to the Congress. And Rashid Tlaib, where's Rashid? I tell you what, Rashid, I want to say to you that I admire your intellect, I admire your passion, and I admire your concern for so many other people. And it's from my heart, I pray that your grandmom and family are well. I promise you I'm going to do everything to see that they are on the West Bank. You're a fighter, and God, thank you for being a fighter.
It's just so disingenuous for Biden to do that. One, look, we all know that it's Sleepy Joe and he has trouble speaking and all of that crap that they throw out there. But this is the first Palestinian American to be in Congress in the middle of a crisis, something that should elevate this person's name in your head, right? You can't even get it right, is just so disrespectful to see. And it's even more disrespectful, in my opinion, for him to invoke her family when he has, from the beginning, had the opportunity to prevent the bloodshed and the bombings and the attacks. And he sat on his hands. In fact, he didn't even just sit on his hands. He was blocking efforts to end the violence. He was blocking, the United States was blocking efforts to stop the violence.
Affirming their right to self-defense, which is just right to continue violence.
Which is like, and the way that he talks about it here is as if like, it's some kind of natural disaster that's happening there, right? Instead of a purposeful onslaught against people, against human beings, against Rashida's family, to talk about like that is just disgusting. And I know we need to get to Brandon, but before we do, I just wanted to make one more point to people about this issue. And we're going to continue covering it because this has been obviously something that has caught everybody's attention because of the extreme violence. And as Matt said a little bit earlier, the ceasefire is not a solution, right? Going back to what it was a month ago is not a solution, right? The absence of Israeli warplanes flying over your head and dropping bombs on towers, right? Just the absence of that is not a solution to this problem. And I think it's really important that Americans in particular, but along with our friends in the UK and Canada, recognize that this is not some natural disaster and continue donating money and trying to help people on the ground deal with the medical and human crisis of this thing. But understand that this is a political problem first and foremost. And beyond just your dollars, donating to charity and things like that, people need your outspoken support. And for you to understand that your elected officials are complicit in this system, that you need to be encouraging them to oppose the apartheid system in Israel, right? There are opportunities all around the country still to show up in solidarity rallies. This is a moment where we can be very, very outspoken and very, very present in our support of Palestinian people. And just understand that this is a political issue and not just some kind of, natural catastrophe. Because what will happen is when the bombs stop going off, people turn off the TV, right? And they say, okay, well, everything's going back to normal. Again, this situation is untenable. It is inhumane. It was a problem before Israel started their bombing campaign, and it is a problem right now. And we have the opportunity and the duty as Americans in particular to fight against this.
Yeah, do we want to quickly mention these dock workers in a shock here. Dock workers in Durban, South Africa have refused to load goods from Israel. British Fire Brigades Union refused to remove activists from roof of Israeli arms factory. Port workers in Livorno, Italy refused to load ships from Israel, all in solidarity with the Palestinian struggle. And I just also quickly with this Italian statement, Naples dock workers belonging to the Sicobas union joined the struggle against transit of weapons through our ports. I just want to skip a little bit ahead. We are unconditionally on the side of the Palestinian people against the occupation and the Zionist aggression on Gaza. We denounce the complicity of the Italian government and almost all parliamentary forces with the Israeli aggression. We denounce the Italian state's silent approval of the transit of Israeli war weaponry through our ports. our hands won't get covered in blood to support your wars. I think that was well crafted.
That's extremely powerful. And, you know, and I think that kind of understanding is what's needed. Is these can't be sideline issues in politics for people anymore, right? The United States government actively participates in these atrocities and these horrors. So when you're talking about political action, when you're talking about, you know, who you're going to vote for, the Palestinian question is not something that you can just sort of, you know, put to the side, because it is a very active and present reality for lots of people, right? And they win, our opponents win, by making this a kind of abstract issue, or something that's, oh, well, this is just for some people who pay a little bit of extra attention to politics. Is something
that's why there's that repetition of it's a complicated issue.
Yes.
To which I think the Loud Boy said on Twitter, like, usually when I see this was Vincent Bevins, writer of the Jakarta Method. It says, usually when I have a complicated issue, I drop $4 billion worth of weapons onto one side of that issue, which is pretty much all you need to know. But yeah, that it is, because it gives people an out. It's just like when somebody says trigonometry is very complicated. It's like, well, I never bother with trigonometry then. But yeah.
No, exactly. And solidarity to all Palestinian people, and free Palestine.
Yeah.